Hello friends, so I'm starting with the presentation on IND AS 113, that is fair value measurement. Now today's content has been divided into 6 parts. So what I'm writing here, outline for today's contents. Outline for contents. The concept part is divided into 6 categories. A, basics and background for IND AS 113. B, scope of standard. C, very important is C, definition of fair value. D, detailed components from definition of fair value. Let me admit, more than 70% standard is covered in C and D. Definition, which is meaning, and its components. So components in detail, once you study, you get around 70% of this standard there. E, item wise guidelines. The different guidelines for non-financial assets, financial assets, and liabilities. So we'll study those in detail, the item wise guidelines. And lastly, F part will be disclosures, where we will study fair value hierarchy. Fair value hierarchy. So these 6 parts will comprise IND AS. Let's start with the first part of this presentation, basics and background for IND AS 113. First of all, this standard is applicable with effect from 1st April 2015. It's a very recent standard, it's not a very old standard. Now, in older times, fair value was not much required. Why it was not required? Because in accounting standards that prevailed then, there was more of historical cost. Fair value accounting was minimal in that. When IND AS were not there, fair value was not much talked of thing. Even if it was talked of, like in older accounting standard 13 for investments, fair value was defined there itself. So there was no need to calculate fair value. But in most of recent IND AS or IFRS even, fair value is getting more and more importance. So a need was felt to give guideline on how to calculate the fair value. That is from where this IND AS 113 came into existence. There is a corresponding IFRS 13. IFRS 13 is similar. Fair value measurement. First it was issued and then IND AS 113 came into existence. I often listen people comparing fair value versus fair market value. If you will ask me, I will not be able to make much of distinction between them, except that for all financial reporting purpose, word fair value is used. In all Ind AS, IFRS, I have not found the word fair market value. In all tax legislations, I find the word fair market value. So different laws are using different terminology. Question arises, as a valuer, is there any difference between two? I don't find much difference. Their municipal valuations, all those are covered under fair market value. And whatever valuer is doing is covered under fair value. But again, let me tell you, while computing this fair value, we are using the financial reporting standards, that is Ind AS or IFRS. This fair value that we studied today, it is for strictly for financial reporting. Means for preparing financial statements, for preparing balance sheet, P&L, cash flows. For that purpose, we are doing this fair value measurement. For fair value measurement, otherwise, if you want to do as a valuer fair valuation, use valuation standards to compute fair value otherwise. Question has always arisen, which valuation standards? Our ICAI RVO issued valuation standards. I gave reference to that standards yesterday in yesterday's reference material. Those who are registered with different RVO should follow international valuation standards. They are quite similar to each other. And under draft valuers bill, which will become act someday, there will be an authority who will issue the valuation standards. Whether they will correspond to ICAI RVO standards or international standards, time will tell. So for valuers, this standard is not applicable. This standard is applicable for those who are preparing the balance sheet, P&L and financial statements. So Ind AS 113 has a limited purpose of measuring fair value for the purpose of reporting the things in the financial statements. They are not helping the valuers to do the valuation. Obviously, principles might be same here and there, but purpose is limited for Ind AS 113. Purpose is not for everybody that fair value will be computed. For tax legislations, it is not applicable. For other laws, not applicable. Only for financial reporting purpose, it is applicable. Going further, the Bear standard, which I'll share today in the reference materials, there are 99 paragraphs. Does not finish there. Plus Appendix A for defined items. Does not finish there. Appendix B for application guidance. This is all comprised in 46 pages. It is not a small standard at all. It's a huge standard and technical also. So to understand everything for your 5 marks in old syllabus and in new syllabus, out of those 5 marks, you have to understand all this content. This is the Ind AS 113 Beer standard. Now further, this standard tells how to determine fair value. How to determine the ways of determining fair value, what you should consider, what you should not consider. Does not tell when to determine or why to determine. So it tells you limited things. It tells you how to determine fair value, the ways of computing fair value. It does not tell you the when and why. In most of other Ind AS which are related with assets or liabilities or even incomes or expenses, they are telling other standards deal with identification, measurement, recognition and disclosures. But this standard deals primarily with measurement and a little bit about disclosures also. Some disclosure also are being told. But identification and recognition is borrowed from other standards. This standard will not tell me when you should have the fair valuation. Some other standard tells me. For example, in property, plant, equipment, they are talking revaluation model. There they say determine the fair value. They have said determine fair value. They don't tell me how to measure. The measurement comes in this. This is common to many other standards. That is why this standard is a companion standard. This standard is a helper. It is helping in achieving the fair valuation of those other standards where the requirement to do the fair valuation is there. Which standards are those? We'll talk separately in the next segment. So this standard is not doing identification and recognition of when and why of determination of fair value. It is only talking how to do the fair valuation, and a little bit of the disclosure part is also included here. Reaching the next part here, objectives and scope of Ind AS 113. The standard itself defines 3 objectives there. Objectives, number 1, to define fair value. For what purpose? Obviously for the purpose of financial reporting, because standard is purely applicable for financial reporting purpose. Number 2, to set out in single Ind AS framework for fair value measurement. So all the framework common to all other standards is being drawn in a single Ind AS. That is being done by Ind AS 113. Number 3, require disclosures about fair value measurement. So 3 things are objective of this standard. The scope is defined in para number 5 of this standard. Now scope is interesting, important. When another standard requires means mandatory or permits fair value measurements or requires disclosures about fair value measurements. When any accounting standard requires to use fair value at a particular place or permits to use fair value at a particular place. The example of permits comes in property, plant, equipment. You are allowed to use either cost model or revaluation model. If you opt for revaluation model, then fair value comes into picture. If you go for cost model, there is no fair valuation required there. So if standard requires or permits or require disclosure about fair value, there is some requirement that you disclose the fair value in the disclosure, then also this standard is applicable. But they have given some exceptions in para 6 and 7. Exceptions in para 6 and 7. I'll just club them. Obviously, they have given separately, one for disclosure, one for measurement and disclosure. I'm just clubbing them. Ind AS 102, share based payments in ESOPs and all. Number 2, Ind AS 17, leases. Ind AS 2, inventories, the NRV concept. In that, fair valuation shall not be applied. In Ind AS 36, impairment of assets, for value in use concept. Now for computing that concept, this fair value measurement will not be applicable. Ind AS 19, employee benefits. These are exceptions where Ind AS 113 shall not be applied. So what is coverage? Examples. I'm just giving examples. There can be any more standards, or even in future some standards get created where fair value measurement is required, the standard will apply. Either standard requires or permits you to use fair value, or disclosure required for fair value. The measurement will be done as per Ind AS 113. Exceptions you must remember, because on those this Ind AS shall not be applicable. Now what are examples? Ind AS 103, business combinations. Now here fair valuation shall be done as per Ind AS 113. Ind AS 105, non-current assets held for sale and discontinued operation. Or discontinuing operations, whatever. Ind AS 32 and 109 on financial instruments. The names are little different, I am just quoting the concept. Number 4, Ind AS 16, property, plant and equipment, as I told you in revaluation model. Number 5, Ind AS 36, impairment of assets. Now people get confused here. I wrote in exceptions Ind AS 36 impairment. I have written the same here also, Ind AS 36. Remember, there are two different concepts. Only exception given there is in value in use. In computing value in use, this fair valuation will not be applicable. There is another concept there, which is fair value minus cost of disposal. What is this called? Those who have done this Ind AS or impairment, this is called recoverable amount. In computing recoverable amount, we compute this figure, fair value minus cost of disposal. Recoverable amount is higher of value in use and this NRV that we compute, fair value minus cost of disposal. Now their standard is applicable because only exception given there is for value in use. For other concepts, wherever fair value word comes, Ind AS 113 is applicable. So if somebody asks you blankly, blindly, is this standard applicable on Ind AS 36? Answer is yes, with the exception of value in use concept. Exception is there, but otherwise the standard is applicable. Last example, Ind AS 38, intangible assets. Now they are purely examples. Any other standard which requires or permits the calculation of fair value or disclosure of fair value, you will have to apply Ind AS 113. That is the scope of this standard. The third part of today's concept is one of the very important part, definition of fair value. What is understood by fair value? I'll make a very brief definition because its components we are going to get in detail in the fourth part of this. So very important, very easy to remember. Fair value is the price dash 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 dash, this will get in the details of the component, B in an orderly transaction C between market D participants, we call it market participants together because as a component we will study market separately and market participants separately. E at the measurement date. We want to study quite a lot about price, orderly transaction, market participants, and measurement date. These are detailed components that we are going to study. So at least one page each on these we are going to study in detail. Price, dash dash dash, because there is so much written there about price, which we will discuss. Price in orderly transaction between market participants at measurement date. So 5 components in detail will comprise the definition of fair value. Unless the 5 components are understood, the definition is not understood. So we'll concentrate on these components in the 4th part of this concept session. So next we reach is detailed components of definition. Now it is very important to understand all the detailed components of the definition. First point which emerged there was the price. I did not state what price we are talking about. So let us complete that definition, because in definition it is written which price. So it is written there, the price that would be received, to sell an asset, or the price that would be paid to settle or transfer a liability. That can be fair value. An amount that will be received from sale of an asset, an amount that will be paid to settle or to transfer a particular liability. That can be fair value if other conditions are also okayed. So what does that show me here? Try to concentrate. It is received to sell, and here it is paid to settle or transfer. What they say here, price is exit price. Once you are finishing off a transaction, the price you are receiving and price you are paying, depending on asset or liability whose fair valuation is being done, that exit price can be the fair price. Under this standard, under Ind AS 113, entry price cannot be the fair value. What is entry price? When you purchase an asset, the amount you pay or cost you incur to purchase it, that is entry price. When you take a loan, the amount you receive at the time of taking loan or issuing debentures, the amount you are receiving is entry price, because you are entering that transaction. Once you are redeeming it, then it is exit price. So this standard considers exit price. That is the important learning from the standard. You are considering exit price, you are not considering entry price. And obviously, as we read this, I can imply incomes and expenses are not being considered in this fair valuation standard. You are talking only asset or liability. You are not talking income or expense. So they are not being fair valued under the purview of the standard. Exit price of asset when you sell, receive, exit price of liability when you pay off, when you settle, when you transfer. That is being considered under this standard. That is first component of definition, price. Second component, number 2. Orderly transaction. Orderly transaction. When a transaction is to be called orderly transaction, it should not be forced transaction. Something forces you to do a transaction, because fair valuation based on hypothetical market concept, which will come in a separate component later on in this. Very importantly, the transaction should not be forced, not under distress. It should not be a distress sale. Let us say I want to move out of the country. Obviously, I want to sell off all my assets instantly. I am under stress of selling it off within 2 months, 3 months, 6 months. The value at which I transact will not be fair value, because it is not orderly transaction. I am not getting normal sufficient time that I should have got to settle my liabilities and to sell off my assets. So orderly transaction has to be a normal transaction. So what it is, if normal time allowed to settle a liability or sell off an asset, then the transaction can be considered orderly. Now, when there are auction sales, the auction is advertised properly in the newspaper and other things. The person who intends to go there has a right to inspect the asset, go there, inspect the asset, get the query. They get time to do all this before the auction is held. And then on the auction day, he is there with his mind for the price he is going to quote. That price can be called as fair value. And that transaction is an orderly transaction. If you are doing something under the threat, coercion, और अगर legal force. It becomes a forced transaction and not an orderly transaction. The auction held under court orders, yes, still it will be orderly transaction. Because at least the buyer is having all the knowledge and then he is bidding for the same. He got the time to do everything. So that transaction is called orderly transaction. This is point number 2. 3. Concept of markets. There are two concepts there. One is market, another is market participant. So I'll go with them one by one. Now, which market I am talking about? In participant, you will get much more detail. But first of all, which market? There is a detailed discussion on this. Very important. In this, I'll cover one small practical question also to explain you the things. And that type of question, 2-3 times it has been asked at CA final level. So focus on this. It's interesting thought that you'll be getting. Now, in doing fair valuation, 2 types of markets are being talked. Principal market, that is preference 1. If this is not available, there is no principal market. I'll tell you what principal market is, how you identify that. But if there is no principal market, then preference 2. Most advantageous market. You cannot say for a businessman, I should first look at most advantageous market. No. The standard is clear. First give priority to principal market if possible. If not possible, then you are looking at most advantageous market. Now what these are, try to understand. I am first talking principal market. Preference 1. Principal market. Now, if the asset is being sold only in one market or liability is being traded only in one market, then the question does not arise. There is only one market, so you have to go for that. But when there are multiple choices, then you are looking at price of which market should be considered. Fair value from which market I should get. Now, what is principal market? When there are multiple choices, market where the entity normally transacts highest or greatest volumes. Now the word used in the standard is volumes, not amounts. Number of transactions which are happening. Now if transactions are happening without considering price, units you are considering basically. So if your share is being dealt in NSE and BSE, most of the big companies, all big companies, Tata, Infosys, all of them, they are being traded at both NSE and BSE. Is the rate same? Quite similar. Little bit of difference can be there, but rates are quite similar. It is saying you check out for a particular period, on a day, in a week, for a month. You have to take a decision on that. In which market predominantly maximum transactions were happening. Maximum units were bought and sold. If there were 10 lakh units dealt at NSE and 50 lakh dealt at BSE, BSE becomes principal market. If there are 49 lakh at NSE, 50 lakh at BSE, don't compare small differences. They are almost same. Then preference one will go. Principal market will not be defined here because there is a problem. The preparers of financial statement, they can keep with them, let's say, difference of 10%. If there is more than 10% difference, then principal market is defined. If it is within 10% difference, then we go to preference 2. So you have to check where there is highest or greatest volume, that market will be principal market. When you are talking of some shares in international markets which may be listed in New York Stock Exchange, Nasdaq, Luxembourg, BSE also, then you have to check at all of them. Highest one, if it is predominant, more than 10% than the next one, then it will be principal. 10% is my example only. The company has to decide what difference will be important for them. So, define if there is a principal market. If it is not, then preference 2 comes into picture. That is more important for your understanding. Preference 2. Most advantageous market. Now, where do I get more advantage? In case of asset, where I get highest return. In case of liability, where I have to pay lowest. Pay low, receive high. That is a key thing. So, advantage is in terms of highest return, lowest payment. So, that will define most advantageous market. We will talk with example. Here comes the example that I was talking of. So, first let us write the meaning there. This is second priority. If it is not principal market, then this comes into picture. The market where the entity gets biggest monetary advantage. For asset maximizes net receipts, for liabilities minimizes payments. For comparing net receipts for assets, we must consider transaction cost as well as transportation cost. However, fair value is computed by deducting only transportation costs, implies transaction cost ignored in determining fair value. This is important. On this point, I was saying there has been an exam question at CA final level. I'll take up one example which will clear everything. It is related to asset only. It is not related to liability, because in case of liability, there is no transportation cost type of concept. You don't have to put the liability in a truck and take to the other place. So that type of thing will not happen. So let's take an example. Let us say there are two markets, market X, market Y. Now, in these markets, for my asset, selling price is quoted equally, 500, 500. The transaction cost, if you want to go in market X and do a transaction, you will have to be a transaction cost of rupees 10. Here is rupees 50. Transportation cost. This first market is far away, so I'll have to incur more transportation cost. Let us say rupees 50. Whereas this Y market is nearby my place, so I have to incur only rupees 15 in reaching there. Now, if I sell in market X, net receipt is what? 500 minus 10 minus 50, 440. In market Y, 500 minus 50 minus 15, 65 is the cost, so I am going to get rupees 435. Now my presumption is they are, none of them is the primary market. The first thing that we have to check, preference 1, as I said, principal market, sorry. None of them is principal market. Now if none of them is this, I am looking for most advantageous. Where I get more advantage if I sell? Where I am receiving more? In market X. So this is my most advantageous market. In determining which market is more advantageous, I must deduct a transaction cost as well as transportation cost. Now, what is the fair value I am going to report? Fair value will be 500 minus 50, 450. It is not 440. In fair valuation, I don't deduct transaction cost. Now, some people say fair value in market Y is 500 minus 15, 485. Fair value is more there. But advantage is not seen in terms of fair value. Advantage is net receipt. There is a difference in net receipt and fair value. First I compute net receipt, whichever is market is giving me more, that is my most advantageous market. In that market I determine fair value, which is selling price minus transportation cost. I have to deduct transportation cost because while I take it there, I'll have to incur that money. transaction cost is not deducted. It is defined in the standard. So on this point only, I am saying there has been question in CA final. So you can always expect a similar thing in your exam also. Be clear about this point of most advantageous market. I hope it is clear. In the reference that I am giving you today later on, CA final study module, there also you will find a question like this with different figures, which you can practice. Fourth point I reach, market participants. Market participants. Word market remains same. It is coming from point number 3 only, principal market or the most advantageous market. Now participant is the main keyword which you are going to understand. It is buyers and sellers in market. Which market? Principal or most advantageous. In the sequence, it is not choice. Preference 1, principal. If there is no principal market, then most advantageous market. Number 2, independent. Not related. As we say at many places, arm's length transaction. They should be unrelated parties, only then their price can be fair value. Knowledgeable about asset or liability. Now, when all these people, the directors and all of IPL teams, when they go to auction, they do lot of research. They are knowledgeable about the asset that they want to buy. That's why their price can be called fair value. We keep sitting here, we say, no, this person is great, he will go for 100 crore. That are our emotions. That is not based on knowledge about the asset or liability. So knowledgeable people are going to be considered. The people who are running purely out of emotions should not be considered. Number 4, able to transact. Number 5, related, willing to transact. They are interrelated basically. There should be no coercion, no stress to transact. They are evaluating the things. If they are finding it good, they are doing the transaction. Otherwise, they are not doing the transaction. So simply, they are able to transact and they are willing to transact. Then they will be termed as market participant. All the concept of market and market participant, it is hypothetical in the minds. You are thinking of people who don't have any specific interest in early sale or early redemption of liability. Those market participants are working in market and deciding on a price at what date. That is the last point, measurement date. So point number 5, measurement date. The date of valuation itself is very important. You have a very simple example to understand. The value of a particular business on 1st March 2020 and 31st March 2020 will be vastly different. Simple thing. Reason? COVID comes, lockdown comes, everything is stopped, business itself, its chain is broken. So there are problems. There are problems. Let us say IT related business like Zoom company. Before March and after March, I think they are having booming in business. They are getting more and more participants. Now think about any of you. Did you ever go to Zoom in 2019? At least I did not know what is Zoom. Except for camera, Zoom, this and that. This application I never knew. So now, due to that tragedy, they are booming. So value of business on measurement date is different. Depends on date. Same thing is there when you do valuation standards. Valuation date is very important. As on which date you are doing valuation for. So that is important to note. So there I don't need to write anything. Measurement date is important as values keep changing with change in conditions. Somebody may say, sir, at 12 noon and 5 p.m. the value can be different. You are right, then you need to write even the time, but that much precision is not required by the Ind AS. Ind AS is only saying measurement date has to be important because based on factors which existed on that day, we are going to do the valuation. Now, all the components of the definition of fair value are over. I told you in beginning also 70% of the standard has been completed. 70% lies in definition and components. Now we are talking item wise guidelines for many of the items. 3 categories we will be making. First category here, non-financial assets. What do you understand by non-financial assets? The assets which are not of financial nature. Very simple. What are financial assets? Debtors are financial asset. Investment in equity and debt, they are financial assets. Many financial instruments, they are financial assets. Here we are talking non-financial assets. What are covered in this? You cover tangible assets like property, plant, equipment, or what we call building, machinery, furniture. They are covered as non-financial assets. A proper guideline is given how to do the valuation of these. Now again and again I am saying it is for the purpose of financial reporting. How will the valuer get the valuation is defined in valuation standards. We are not talking of that valuation. We are talking of valuation for the purpose of financial reporting. If it is required by the standard, either required or permitted or to be disclosed, then we are doing this. Only one method talked there. Method required to be used highest and best use method. In short, we many times refer it as HBU method. There is no other alternative given. They are saying non-financial assets, if you have to valuate fair value under financial reporting standard, you will be using HBU method. Now, what is there in this standard? Ignore actual use and actual capacity utilization. Analyze all uses from point of view of asset and not from point of view of entity. There is an asset, the company's articles of association and memorandum says you are not allowed to lease it out unless you get permission from, let's say, shareholders or anybody. This is restriction from entity point of view. Such assets are being leased out, so there is no restriction from asset angle. The asset does not say that I cannot be leased out. But your company's documents do not allow you to do it. The law of your company, legal structure of your company does not allow you. So you are going to consider that option also. So from point of view of asset, analyze all uses and highest and best use will determine its value. So very important is, from company point of view you are not looking, you are looking from asset point of view. That is the difference. It's sometimes confusing, but you have to be sure you are doing the valuation of asset from asset perspective, not from company perspective. Calculate net economic benefits possible in all options and select the option that provides highest economic benefit. So calculate net economic benefits possible in all the options and select the option which provides highest net economic benefit. Consider, this is what standard specifically says, legal permissions. If law of the land does not allow a particular use of asset, you cannot consider economic benefit even if it is higher than the other possibilities. There is a machine with the help of which I can produce drugs. I am not allowed. Even if that is a possibility, ignore that option. So here you are talking about law of the land. Any act prohibits a particular working, that you will not consider. Some legal limit is there. Due to pollution, you will not produce more than 10,000 units in a month or something like that. Then you cannot go beyond 10,000. So you have to consider law for sure. Physical possibilities. My machine has physical capacity to produce this much units in a day. I cannot have theoretical assumptions and you say it will be used more and more. No. Physical possibility must be considered. Financial feasibility. You have to check out how much financial resources can be applied on that asset. Financial feasibility is also going to be considered. So considering these three constraints, you will find out all the possible uses, and highest and best use will help determining the value of this non-financial asset. Assets related value is being found and not entity specific value. Hence, consider restrictions on assets and not the entity. So this is for non-financial assets. Second category comes financial assets. Like debtors, investments, financial instruments, etc. Now here they are little more generalized. They are talking about apply any of following techniques as appropriate. They have talked various approaches that we study in valuation standards also. Three approaches are there. Cost approach, income approach, market approach. Now, cost approach is traditional approach. They talk about replacement cost concepts, if we want to replace same type of asset today, how much cost I'll have to incur, that can be considered. Income approach I've done in detail in the earlier lecture yesterday. That is based on discounted cash flow technique. Where we compute present value of future cash inflows. This is good for investment which is unquoted, for which quotation is not available, market listing is not there. Now, market approach, investment which is quoted. For this, it is a good approach. What you can do, get quote from market of same or similar entity and make adjustments. You can make adjustments based on the factors which are applicable on this investment as compared to the market investment whose code you are taking. Now, they are being done briefly here at some other place in valuation standards topic. You will be doing those in much more detail. The standard talks very briefly about these. This is the second category. Third category, liabilities. Now try to understand the scheme under the liabilities. The standard clearly says if liability is a demand liability, means it is payable on demand, then fair value is equal to amount payable on demand. For other liabilities, the following rules can be applied. Check 1. Does active market exist? If yes, quoted market price will be taken. Consider quoted market price. If no, I reach check 2. If no, if active market does not exist, then does the liability represent financial asset for some other party? For some other party. So if something is yes, I get the answer. The things are over there. But if it is no, then I am checking this. Does the liability represent financial asset for some other party? Like my liability is debentures, unlisted debenture. It will be financial asset of the other party. Then what to do? Determine fair value of that financial asset, and it will be fair value of liability also. Now this happens if it is yes. So if it is yes, matter is over there. I have determined the fair value and I am getting it there. If no, then I reach third thing. Check 3. If it is no, then use market observable inputs, that is present value technique, to get fair value of liability. Now, what is the example here? Which liability will come into check 3? First is active market exists. Quoted debenture, best example. Second check, if it is unquoted debenture, then it comes in second. Liability represent financial asset for some other party. If it is not even this, then it comes to 3. The example is provision for expenses. It is not asset of anybody. It is my provision for expenses which is to be incurred, a provision for losses for that matter. It is not financial asset of anybody. Now you have to use market observable inputs, that is present value technique, to get the fair value of liability. This is all about liabilities and all the different types of item wise guidelines which were applicable. Last part of this F part, disclosures which are defined as fair value hierarchy. You have to give disclosures in your financial statements that what type of inputs did you use to do the fair valuation. Did you use level 1, level 2 or level 3? You have to understand what is level 1, level 2 and level 3. Level 1 is most reliable. Level 3 is least reliable. So you need to understand, and in your notes to financial statements, you'll be giving that. Remember, the standard is not for the purpose of doing valuation, it is for making financial reports, for financial reporting. So disclosure is there only. I'm not talking valuation report you have to disclose there. That valuation standards will tell. So looking at this, while selecting the technique for fair valuation, want to get reliable and relevant value. In financial statements. Hence, there is a need to maximize the use of observable inputs and minimize the use of unobservable inputs. What is observable? Which anybody can recheck and find, like market quotations. You will check the market rates as on that date, even from internet. You can find the details. Unobservable will include what you presumed. So you may not be able to observe it as an independent checker. So that is more reliance on observable input, less on unobservable. Under this standard, there are 3 levels given. Level 1 inputs. Most reliable, direct, market, observable factors like quoted price, available without adjustment. level 2 inputs lesser reliable than level 1. Either adjusted quoted price, you made some adjustments, you can verify quoted price, but adjustment is not observable, or uses insignificant, means lesser use, they are using but lesser use, unobservable inputs. Either you have adjusted the observable inputs, or there are insignificant use of unobservable inputs. Level 3 inputs. Least reliable. But when there is no choice, you might be using least reliable. You are going to show it, disclose it in the financial report that I have used the level 3 input, which is least reliable, but I have used it because there was no choice. Here is significant use of unobservable inputs as quoted market price may not be available. This is complete Ind AS 113. I've tried to do all the justice to this standard, but this is highly technical, very big standard. In reference material, I'll refer to the material related to this standard only. I hope by revising it 2 times, 3 times, you'll get a hold over this standard. In the second segment, I discuss reference materials for the day. I'm going to talk about 2 reference materials and both relate to today's topic, that is fair value measurement Ind AS 113. Now, first reference material is the bare standard. The standard that I talked is of so many pages and so many paragraphs with appendices covering the definition, application guidance. It is available at MCA website. So, first reference material is at mca.gov.in. Under that, you look at Act and Rules. In this, find accounting standards. There you get Ind AS as on 1/4/2018. Under that you get Ind AS 113. This is bare standard, highly technical. A better reference material is in CA Final study material. It is more diagrammatic. You find 5-word questions also, not objective type, but explaining your practical aspect. So that is the second reference material for the day. What do you have to do? Go on to www.icai.org. Under that, find students. Under that, BOS knowledge portal. Under this, new scheme of education and training. Under this, final course. Under this, paper 1 on financial reporting. Paper 1 which is on financial reporting. Under this, study material applicable for a particular attempt. Under that, again study material. In this, look for chapter 4 unit 3. You will be able to identify, there it is written, your own IND AS 113. This is what we are looking for. So this is the details that you can find out on ICAI.org. This is a study material for CA final students. Very good material, it is available there. So you can rush through and revise the standard from there. You want to see anything exact, bare, look at the Ministry of Corporate Affairs document. So these are two good references for IND AS 113. The third segment of the day is strategic tip of the day. Now the tip revolves around when should I appear in the exam. All dates, whenever they will be available, the question arises, when should I appear? Let me talk few things. Learning is never finished. I completed registered valuer exam last year June, 2019 June. I am still learning. So keep on learning. Learning will never finish. When I went to exam, I thought I'll appear this time and legal items like insolvency and bankruptcy code, I'll come back home and start preparing, because I didn't know that. But they never gave me opportunity to learn it. So what I'm trying to say, the preparation is never complete. There are three types of people. There is one category which says, I cannot appear because I am not prepared. Second category says, I will pass, so I am not preparing. Third category is, I will attempt. Now I fall into this third category. I thought I'll attempt. If it does not happen, then I'll prepare more. Simple. The first category is lack of confidence. Second category, I call it overconfidence. Some people may be very intelligent, but I still call it overconfidence. While going into any professional exam, at least I was never sure that I will pass. I've always tried to the best of my abilities. So I have always attempted. If you keep this in mind, I will attempt, you can surely attempt. What I will suggest you, appear as soon as possible. After this lockdown, as soon as the things are comfortable for going out and all social distancing, curfews, lockdowns, book a date so that you get to know this day I am going to appear. Don't think of postponing it at all. Just appear. Till that day, put your best efforts. In these times, you don't have much of other tasks, so you can prepare very well and appear as soon as the lockdown is over. What I did at my level, our classes had recently finished. So I filled up the exam. And as soon as possible, I appeared. So everything was fresh in minds. You're learning here also, otherwise also at home. After lockdown, you may get busy in your other task. GST returns, income tax returns, the Companies Act returns. You'll get again busy there. Before you get busy there, appear in the exam for sure. I hope that will be very fruitful for your analysis and understanding. Reaching the fourth segment today, objective type questions. Now let me admit, in this Ind AS 113, I'm having very few questions available. So what I'm doing is, those few questions I'm giving you in assignment today. I think I've shared more than 150 questions in last 3 days. And pardon me for having lesser questions in this. Whatever I'm having, I'll be sharing you today, and tomorrow you'll be getting the answer. So today being my last day, I'm just giving my concluding remarks on the sessions. I need to thank CA Rachit Goel, who conceived all this idea of taking these classes. It was very well implemented by CA Amitoj, who is the chairman of the Chandigarh branch, and organizing committee member Vishal Puri. I have to always thank the other members of the team, including CA Upkar Singh ji, who is the vice chairman, CA Bridge, who is the past chairman, CA Saurav, CA Anil Kakkad. They are all instrumental in creation of these classes and implementation of the scheme. My thanks are certainly due to all the participants who have patiently gone by the knowledge that I have shared and participated in the problem sessions also. And I am very sure with the next galaxy of tutors coming, you'll be getting far more better knowledge of this valuation course. All the best for your exam. See you later.